On the Sublime. On the Sublime is a Roman-era Greek work of literary criticism dated to the 1st century AD. Its author is unknown, but is conventionally referred to as Longinus or Pseudo-Longinus. It is regarded as a classic work on aesthetics and the effects of good writing. The treatise highlights examples of good and bad writing from the previous millennium, focusing particularly on what may lead to the sublime. One of Longinus' assertions is that in order for one's writing to reach the sublime, the writer must possess and exhibit what he refers to as moral excellence. Theories abound that Longinus avoided publishing his writings in order to preserve his modesty and therefore moral excellence. This might be another reason why the authorship of On the Sublime is uncertain. Another main point that Longinus makes is that a writer who transgresses social mores may not necessarily be a fool or shameless. For Longinus, social subjectivity is also important. He writes that in order to support spirit and hope, freedom is necessary. That said, too much freedom can lead to a decline in eloquence, which according to Longinus, which can hamper one's ability to write in the sublime. To go into sublimity in more depth, Longinus provides 5 sources that can lead to this goal: great thoughts, noble diction, dignified word arrangement, strong emotions and particular figures of speech or thoughts. The sublime also has a number of specific effects, for which Longinus calls upon readers to search. The loss of rationality, deep emotion combined with pleasure, and alienation. That alienation should lead to identifying the creative process in order to be considered sublime. Longinus simplifies these effects by stating that a strong writer will not focus on his own emotions, or trying to convey emotions, but rather to cause the reader to feel those emotions. In addition, Longinus admires genius in writing. He mentions specific writers in addition to Homer, including Sappho, Plato, and Aristophanes. Longinus talks about these writers' ability to create the sublime by causing readers to feel pleasure. Other writers on his list are Apollonius of Rhodes and Theocritus for their sophisticated poetry. However, Longinus says they fail to measure up to classic writers like Homer, because they lack the bravery. Bravery is necessary to take risks, and taking risks is necessary to reach the sublime. After making his points about the sublime, Longinus laments the decline of the oratory arts. The reason for this is twofold: it comes from the absence of freedom as well as moral corruption. These two phenomena, Longinus reminds readers, damage is the high spirit which creates the sublime. It's important to note that the use of the English word sublime, and all its philosophical associations that accompany, arise from multiple translations. But the word truly means the essentials of a noble and impressive style. Longinus' own writing is rarely described as perfect or even sublime, in part because of his overzealous enthusiasm. This leads to an overuse of hyperbole, or overstatement, on his part. Longinus is also criticized for writing tediously in On the Sublime. By the 10th century, On the Sublime was copied into a medieval manuscript where it was incorrectly attributed to Dionysius or Longinus, which was misread or mistranslated as Dionysius Longinus, and therefore confused with Dionysius of Halicarnassus, who also lived during the 1st century. The work was also attributed to Cassius Longinus, but as he lived from 213 to 273 CE, he cannot be the same Longinus who wrote On the Sublime. 300 years later, references were made by a Byzantine rhetorician to text that might be On the Sublime. In the 16th century, the treatise was published by Francis Robortello in Basel, and 6 years later by Niccolò da Falgano. In the 1600s, the concept of reaching the sublime becomes a major goal of Baroque literature, and the treatise is rediscovered. Since then, On the Sublime has received more attention with each passing century. End of the analysis. Thank you.